He shouldn't die. Yes, fuck you.
Alright, Netflix's Castlevania is one of my favorite shows in recent memory. It's beautifully animated, brilliantly cast, super well written, and entertaining as hell. And, surprisingly, this is a video game adaptation that doesn't completely suck. I'd even go so far as to say this is the best adaptation ever. And no, I'm not counting The Witcher, because that was a book first. However, being the best video game adaptation ever may not be the high level of praise it ought to be because of how incredibly low the bar is. Studios have been trying for years to make these work, and the best rated one out of all of them is probably Angry Birds 2. So, yeah, I think that tells you everything you need to know there. So why does this happen? Well, there's a few simple reasons why video games are so hard to adapt to movies. Games are long. A typical AAA game's story is usually drawn out somewhere between 20 and 30 hours. That makes it super hard to cut all of that down to fit into a comprehensive 1.5 to 2 hour long movie, and have anywhere near the same level of character and plot development without seeming like an absolutely rushed mess. These adaptations suffer by trying to tell a story that we already know. This isn't like a book where you're giving faces and voices to characters you've only ever seen in your mind. Fans of the games are seeing something on screen that they've already seen before. There's nothing new here. The stories being told are ones that they're familiar with, and they won't really appreciate a Cole's Notes version of it, while newcomers to the series will be really confused because of all the huge story elements that are being left out. Movies won't generally be as engaging as a game. Players fall in love with a character's story because they are going on that journey with them. They control their actions and have a hand in their success. If someone wanted to just experience the story without actually playing the game, they could just go on Twitch or YouTube and watch it there. Finally, these adaptations just tend to be very cheesy. Studios don't seem to take the source material from these things very seriously, and they just end up coming off like a joke. Those limitations might explain movies, but what about TV shows? Well, TV shows of gaming properties do exist, but they're mostly in the forms of 90s Saturday morning cartoons. Not exactly high-end TV. However, the advantage of having things made as a TV show is that it helps with the aforementioned timing issue, by being able to tell more of a story over a longer period of time. Castlevania manages to overcome some of the other limitations by using the games as a sort of inspiration and not a rigid set of guidelines that need to be adhered to beat for beat. That said, how closely does the show follow the actual plot of the game? Well, having known nothing about Castlevania before I started watching this show, I did a little research. Castlevania is a game that has been around for a long time, with many different entries over the years. For the show, well, at least seasons 1 and 2, it seems like most of it has been based off of the 1989 game Castlevania 3: Dracula's Curse. The story follows Trevor Belmont as he teams up with the sorceress Sypha Belnades,
I'm Sypha Belnades.
a pirate named Grant Dynasty, and Dracula's son Alucard as they side-scroll, platform jump, and monster mash their way on to killing Dracula. What's great about shows like Castlevania is that it takes characters from older games and gives them, well, character. It's a great way to showcase these characters that may have only had text to express themselves in the past. A huge reason Castlevania works is because it doesn't force things in there just because it was in the game. If something didn't fit into their story, they didn't include it. Sorry, Grant the Pirate. But, with Grant the Pirate in mind, the show often pays respect to the source material and the fans by nodding to stuff in ways that everyone can enjoy, like naming one of the cities in the later season, Dynasty, or the mentioning in the earlier seasons of
One guy with the horse-drawn sailboat on wheels that called himself the Pirate of the Roads.
Since the original story isn't very complex to begin with, it's free to take a lot of liberties, like changing Dracula's motives from "because I feel like it" to something a little more compelling, with the murder of his wife Lisa by the church. All this being said, it still does more than enough to make it clear that this is indeed a Castlevania-inspired story. It takes not only familiar characters, but familiar moments from the game and makes them far more epic. You can't tell me that this battle of Trevor versus the Cyclops when he first meets Sypha isn't far more cinematic with some upgraded graphics. It's the same story moment, but I would argue vastly improved, and therefore makes sense to have adapted into a show. Like I said before, I never played Castlevania, but right away when I started watching the show, I could see the video game inspired elements in a lot of its details. Everything from talking to villagers for information, to the swinging from platform to platform, to the epic boss battles, to finding hidden objects behind walls. All of this screams video game, but it was all done in service to this story. This is how you create a video game inspired story that is faithful to the original source material while still standing on its own as a great piece of work. I think studios are starting to figure out that this is the best way to adapt video games. You need to choose ones that are packed with lore and create something fresh out of that. Take stories that haven't been explored or haven't been fully realized and build upon them. These stories can be engaging for newcomers who are unfamiliar to the games as a way to introduce them to those worlds, but obviously still have enough nods to fans so they can point out every single Easter egg. We're starting to see more and more stuff like this come out, with Castlevania and then Dota coming out recently, as well as the upcoming League of Legends animated series. I think studios are starting to realize that what gamers want, what audiences want, aren't the same stories that have been told over and over, but to take those properties and expand upon them. Stuff like this makes me hopeful for the future of video game adaptations. And it'll be nice to see some League of Legends again without people telling me how much I suck. I'm truly excited for the future, and I hope by some miracle we get another taste of Castlevania down the line. That's it for now. Thanks for listening to me talk gaming.